Sveiki žinių radio klausytojai, čia laida Pasiaiškinam, prie mikrofono Aušra Jurgauskaitė. Laidoje šiandien mes turime ypatingą svečią, tai yra buvęs britų kareivis, kovojęs su ukrainiečiais priešakinėse linijose, kuris buvo papuolęs į rusų nelaisvę. Šiandien jis laisvas, ištvėręs kankinimus ir jis yra mūsų studijoje, tai yra Šaunas Pinneris, savo istoriją sudėjęs į knygą Gyvenk, kovok, nepasiduok. Tad šiandien apie tai, ką jam teko ištverti, mes ir pasikalbėsime. Hi.
Hi.
So to start from the beginning of your story, we need to look quite earlier than the 2022 February 24th. And you were fighting already with the Ukrainians before that. How did it all happen?
Well, how long we got? I've got to unpack it all. Well, it started, I'd come to a point in my life where I'd come to a crossroads. I'd come out of a 9-year relationship. My son had gone to university, so he'd found beer and life. I spent a lot of time on my own. I had a successful business. And really, I just sort of made a decision that I wasn't happy in my life and didn't really want to keep doing 16-hour days and commutes into London and travelling. And while I enjoyed my job and it gave me the fix at the time that I needed, I really wanted to go back to basics and start feeling happy and contributing again and, feeling a sense of purpose. So I had a friend, to cut a long story short, I had a friend who was working in Mariupol as a bomb disposal expert and sapper, who really initially said, why don't you come over here? You've had 9 years British military experience. We need instructors. Come over. So I went on holiday, met a few guys I'd been working with before in places like Syria and Iraq, and they were over there looking to teach Ukrainian armed forces NATO tactics, less reliance on electrical equipment, basic infantry skills, and I became a sniper instructor with the National Guard for 2 years, working with people like Azov and National Guard, and for approximately 2 years, and then in that 2 years, I'd met my wife, fell in love with the country, didn't go home for 5 years, lived in Mariupol, fell in love with the climate, the hot weather, spring, summer. We had obviously very cold winters, 4 feet of snow, -30, So I really didn't know politically about Ukraine when I went over there. I say in my book, there are 3 different types of people that go over to fight foreign wars: runaways, believers, and killers. Well, I got to admit, I was probably a runaway to start with because I was just looking for something different, and then became a believer in the cause, in Ukraine's sovereignty. Enjoyed my job. I'd spent 9 years learning how to fight Russians in the British Army. I come from working with in Bosnia, on operations in Bosnia, Northern Ireland. So, like I said, I'd been training. I'd spent 9 years learning how to fight Russians. I went in with my eyes wide open, just doing a job I knew how to do. I wasn't academically, trained or schooled, or I went to the army when I was 16, 17. So I had transferable skills that I could maybe look to make a new life and work with Ukrainians who were really keen and eager to learn NATO tactics.
And just before the invasion, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, you and your wife, you had a short holiday planning a new kitchen for 7,000. That didn't happen, and you had to get again to the front lines. And then the full-scale invasion happened. Did you feel it coming?
I think if you ask most Ukrainians, including my wife, no. We'd had 4 or 5 years of Russia's going to invade, and they never did. And generally the consensus was it will sort itself out. When my wife was wanting to redo the kitchen and fix a problem in the apartment, we had an apartment on the left bank in Mariupol. I'd been living there, paying my taxes there since 2018. I was working towards my citizenship and had a residency, so I was legal status in the country. Definitely wasn't a mercenary because I never set foot out of the country. I was actually in, a democratically elected government's military, working for President Zelensky when the invasion started. So, it was my home and my community. And I think most Ukrainians thought it would just, it would sort itself out. And unfortunately, something inside me was watching this army grow from 180,000 on the border to over 200,000. And then the journalists started to move from Mariupol to Dnipro, closer to the invasion date, which meant that I thought something was going to happen. And then we saw the vehicles with the Zs. And really, I was in the trenches thinking, well, that's it. And the technology changed. We were deployed in the trenches 3 months before the full-scale invasion. So we were we were already knew it was going to happen, because 2-3 weeks before the invasion, they were starting to use artillery to bomb behind our position. The technology changed on the front line. Suddenly, the drones changed. We were looking at now not just quadcopter homemade drones. We were looking at FPV drones, Lancet drones, reconnaissance drones. All this technology, the being able to drop ordnance and bombs at, using thermal at night was quite new. I hadn't seen it in 5 years. Suddenly it all changed overnight, which we knew then Russia were coming across the border. It was just when. February the 24th, I was actually in a forward observation position about 800 meters forward of the first line. So I couldn't have been any closer to the Russians. And we 4 o'clock in the morning, we just got told the Russians across the border, prepare for war, basically. And that was the start of the invasion.
You say that the question was only when, but did you ask, did you even imagine how it will be, that invasion, how everything will, I don't know, turn out, what methods they will use? And I understand that it was quite shocking from what you experienced before, comparing to Bosnia and Syria. It was nothing like you imagined and experienced. How different is the war in Ukraine?
I'd had 13 years in the military. This was my 9th war tour. 4 of them I'd done in Ukraine. So it was steadily getting worse. And we'd been blogging about this for years, but it was called the Forgotten War for a long time. We were saying, if you don't sort something out, this scenario is going to happen. And it's got more in common with the Second World War than it has anything after that. It's fighting in trenches. It's a Second World War on steroids. Now you have satellites, thermal, you have drones. I describe one point where the drones were coming into our compound in Mariupol, Ilachar, 10 feet above the ground, looking in through windows and doors, trying to find us. It was like Terminator. Yeah, we'd gone through several weeks of starting out in a trench, which was like the Somme, the First World War, muddy, gritty, wet, frozen, cold, to then fighting in steelworks, which, the enemy was coming in 30 meters, 50 meters. I described it as the end scenes to Saving Private Ryan. They were coming in with tanks through holes in walls, and we could hear Russian being spoken, and they were taking up positions in our compound that we formerly had. So we were shrinking. We were losing. My platoon lost 60% of its capability. All 3 BTRs, armoured personnel carriers, were destroyed by air superiority. So Russia had air superiority in Mariupol. We didn't have anything to combat that. So we were just getting smashed on a regular basis. And they solely relied upon artillery, mortars, SPGs, air power, and just kept smashing and smashing. And when they encircled us, that was it. After several weeks with running out of food, ammunition and water, I understand President Zelensky said you could either negotiate your surrender or you can try and get back to friendly lines. And we opted to escape and try and break out.
And that is how you got captured eventually. How did it happen?
Well, when he gave the order for us that we could either surrender or break out, my platoon decided to break out. Over a couple of weeks, they'd been welding steel plates to lorries. They looked very Mad Max, like the film, put together, bodged. And we were going to try and drive out as far as we could until we couldn't use the vehicles anymore, and then escape on foot, maybe 130 kilometers to a friendly battalion that was fighting on the Azov coast against the Russians. So we looked to break out, and the first night was cancelled. It was a great night to try and escape. It was foggy, dark, miserable. So good time to avoid the drones and get out. Unfortunately, there were 2 Russian BMPs on the road out. We couldn't get out, so we decided to delay the operation for 24 hours. It was the toughest 24 hours of my life, because with that I was just counting down the clock until we could go again the next night. And unfortunately, the next day, we left about 3 o'clock in the morning when it was dark. But when the sun rose, it was the bluest sky. The sun was out. It was the hottest day of the year so far. It was an amazing day. Dreadful if you're trying to escape Mariupol. So the drone capability at that point, Mariupol looked like Heathrow Airport. It was just so many drones. So we were quickly compromised and ambushed on the way out of Mariupol. And unfortunately, during the early hours while it was dark, we all got split up because the planes came down and started to ambush the column. We all tried to dismount the vehicles, get out. We had injured with us, so it was real carnage. So I was trying to help an officer from my platoon into a building who was injured. And then once I got him into that building, I went looking for my platoon, which I couldn't find in the dark. And as the sun started to come up, I had to make a decision whether I was going to stay with the guys that just helped. And unfortunately, one problem became 2 and 3, and then we were finding injured in the buildings. Then they were coming out the wood, trees, and it just became a real big problem. And I was with a medic and an orderly who were far more qualified than me. So I made a decision, because I was still intact, still with my weapon, still with my ammunition, to go and find my platoon, which I couldn't find. And in the end, I made a decision to try and escape to friendly lines. And then maybe I would meet my platoon or Ukrainians trying to break through those first Russian lines who had encircled Mariupol. And unfortunately, I was captured about 2 hours outside Mariupol while I was moving through a village, trying to avoid the drones, going through buildings, trying to look for food and water, because we'd had 7 weeks of very little food and we were running out of water. And then I was captured about 2 hours outside Mariupol. I literally walked up onto an upper level of this village through an open patch, which I was a bit uncomfortable about going into. But you can't really walk at night because of the mine threat and the tripwires and rastashkas that are in place around Mariupol. So it was about getting my bearings. And when I was trying to find my exact location, trying to find a feature that I could identify and know exactly where I was in Mariupol, then I just literally walked into a Donetsk People's Republic position, which was everything I didn't really want to do. I'd come up with a plan that I would surrender to Russians if they got close, and I didn't really want to surrender to the Donetsk People's Republic because they were unpredictable, they were militias, they weren't really soldiers. And then I was captured by them. They fired a shot, which I don't know if they missed or fired a warning shot. But when I went down, I was able to throw my phone that I had on me into a small pond lake where it had been raining and flooded. So it was about 3 feet deep. I managed to get it into there, watch that sink, and then had to make a decision whether I was going to try and make a run for it or surrender. And unfortunately, it was broad daylight and that was out in the open. So, and they had the high ground. So if I was going to run away, I think they would have cut me down. I certainly don't regret it. So I made the decision to surrender to them.
And you immediately told them that you are a Brit.
Yeah.
And you are a Marine. Why?
Well, because one thing is that I'd learned Russian, not Ukrainian. So my time I spoke Suzik in Mariupol. So my Russian was good enough, but really I still speak Russian with a Cockney London accent. So while I can make myself understood and listen and understand, I still didn't speak with an accent, which they would pretty much know I was foreign American or a Brit probably. So there was pointless. I wasn't going to get through the tactical questioning. So I came up with a plan. Because I'd spent 9 years in the British Army, I was trained in survival, escape, resistance, evade training, resistance training. And part of that training was about making a plan and using that plan to firstly, if you're captured, get through without injury. And secondly, I wasn't going to get through a filter process. So the only way I thought I could stop myself from getting shot was really tell them I was English. And maybe they would think I would have some sort of value. So quite early on, I thought if I ever get compromised, ditch phone, tell them I'm English, speak Russian, tell them in Russian I'm English, and then sort of try and get through that first part of capture uninjured. And unfortunately, when I was captured straight away, they stabbed me. Handed me over to Russian regulars, who then stabbed me in the leg to stop me from running away.
And then you got captured, you got tortured. I don't know. What do you feel that is like the most important part to tell about this period while you've been in prison, tortured, and stuff like that?
I think, first of all, you're fighting a war in a different way. You're still fighting, and you have to hold on to meaning. You have to hold on to hope.